This is My Crazy, My Rules, where the only crazy thing is my fondness for reading your letters and seeing a piece of your thoughts. I'm your host, Benn Shannon, so grab a coffee, settle in, and let's listen to this next letter together because that's what we do here. We share our crazy one story at a time. And before I get into this next letter, I wanted to let you know that this episode is in memory of my daughter-in-law's mother, Jeannie, who passed away yesterday on August 24th. May her memory be forever a blessing, and please keep her family and her friends in your thoughts and prayers. This episode features a letter from my TI from when I went into Air Force basic training in January of 1982. And before I read his personal letter, I would be amiss if I didn't tell you a little bit about this man. And in order to tell you about this man, I need to first tell you about why I even went into the Air Force in the first place. And I mainly went in the Air Force because I could. I scored pretty high on my ASVAB, and that's the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, which very simply is kind of like your SATs to get into college. And because I scored well, I had my choice of which service I wanted to get into, and it's kind of tiered. You have to score so well in order to get into the different services. And like for the Army or the Marines, you need a score of at least a 31 or above. And the difference between the Army and the Marines ASVAB is that the Marines do theirs in crayon. Then to get into the Navy, you need to score at least a 35. And that's what my daughters did. That's what their husbands did. They scored a 35, but to get into the Air Force, you need a 36. And I joined the Air Force. Now, you're asking, why am I telling you this part? Because I know now I'm going to get a ton of hate mail from the different services. Well, besides the Marines, because I understand on their last deployment, they ate most of their crayons. And I feel that hate mail from them is better than no mail at all. But all joking aside, all the military branches of the United States are the most amazing in all of the world. There is not a single branch that is any better than the others because all of us are in the same family. And one of the things about Sergeant Cole is at the end of every email he sends you, there's a quote, and it says this: "A veteran, me, whether active duty, retired, National Guard, or Reserve, is someone who, at one point in their life, signed a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount of up to and including my life. That is honor, and there are way too many people in this country who no longer understand it." And the author of that quote is unknown. So, let's talk a bit about my primary MTI, Staff Sergeant at the time, Ron Cole. When this man came up to me the first time, he towered above me. Well, that's not hard to do because at 5'4", anybody out of about the 6th or 7th grade towers above me. But Sergeant Cole towered above me, and he was the picture of military bearing. Everything about his uniform was perfect, from the top of his absolutely clean campaign hat to the bottom of his super shine shoes. And on the bottom of his shoes, the MTI wore taps, metal ones, so that you knew when they were coming. And I believe even the taps on his shoes seemed to play "Off We Go into the Wild Blue Yonder" in perfect pitch. This man took a bunch of young, immature, non-military kids and made them into a team of perfection. He even had to teach some of the guys how to shave, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he had to teach some of them how to brush their teeth. But he did make us so perfect that we even became an honor flight. And one of the things I remember most is that he didn't do this by demeaning anyone. You see movies today and you see the TIs or the DIs get right into the person's face and they yell at him and they scream at him and they call him names and they ask him, "Didn't your mother have any children that lived?" And it's just really just almost horrible. But Sergeant Cole didn't do that. He didn't talk down to you. He didn't make you feel stupid. He did most of his by example. He did it by leading and showing what being an airman was all about. If you could not get something right, he worked with you until you did. And if you still needed help, he would pair you up with somebody that would make sure you got it perfect. But, yes, there's always a but. There was always one question he would ask you before he did any of that. And that was a simple question. He would look at you. He would be gentle. You could see the caring in his eyes. And he would say, "Airman, did you come 2,000 miles just to piss me off?" I always wanted to say, "Yes, sir, I did." But, I never had the guts to do that. But I did once actually get to answer a question from him the way I wanted. We were all set to get ready to go out to the obstacle course the next day. So we were getting our uniforms ready. We were shining our boots. We were just getting everything together, but we were all kind of complaining. And you have to realize the dorm is set up into two sides, and on each side there is 2 rows of bunks, some are bunk beds, some regular beds. And I was at the back of the dorm, and his office was at the front, and he had come through the front door and was going into his office. And I guess I was complaining maybe a little bit louder than everybody else, and I guess he kind of heard this. And as he was walking into his office, he stopped and he called down and he says, "Airman Shannon, are you a wimp?" And I responded, probably a little too quickly, "Yes, sir, that's with a capital W." Well, the dormitory went quiet. Sergeant Cole had stepped into his office, but he took a step back, turned around the corner, and he stared at me. You could have heard a pin drop. He then cracked a smile and just went back into his office. What do you know? He has a sense of humor. The other thing about him, though, this is what made him different, is that even though he was our TI, even though he was a staff sergeant and we were lowly Airman Basics, E1s, and he had been in the Air Force for years and we had been for maybe 2-3 days, he never posed that he was better than any of us. He made sure that every single one of us knew that through hard work, studying, and listening to him, we could all be great. And not a single one of us couldn't exceed what he was. And that to me was just one of the most amazing things about this man. And one of the things while I was in basic training I had always been very good at is writing. And even before basic training, I was good at writing. And one of the things that I was really good at in writing was poetry. And this kind of gave me a leg up in the dorm. I would write letters to the girlfriends for my bunkmates, and they would fold and iron my uniforms. And you have to understand, this had to be done perfectly. During inspections in the morning, Sergeant Cole would tap his way down the dormitory, and he would be checking everything. And one of the things was, your clothing had to be folded a precise way at a precise measurement. It had to be 6 inches exactly. Now, I'm not going to tell you how Sergeant Cole explained to us in uncertain terms how we could measure 6 inches, but one of the correct ways of doing it was we carried a little book, and the book was 6 inches, and we could measure it perfectly. And when Sergeant Cole would come by and measure my clothing, it was always perfect. The ironing was always perfectly done, and that's one of the reasons I made honor graduate, and that's one of the reasons I'm kind of scared to be telling you this, because I think he may come up to my house and take my honor graduate ribbon away from me, considering I didn't do all the work. But the other thing that happened here was I got the nickname Poet. And I thought this was just something my bunkmates called me and nobody else knew about it. But one day Sergeant Cole caught me by surprise. We were running in formation during PT, and he suddenly yelled out, "Poet, why don't you give us a cadence?" I really think he was trying to catch me by surprise, but I wasn't going to allow it. So I made one up real quick, and I belted it out loud and proud and continued for the entire run. I didn't give him a chance to get back into it. I called the cadence the whole time. Now, the problem here is Sergeant Cole knew something I didn't, and that something was called breath control. I called cadence at the very top of my lungs the entire time. When we were finished with the run, I was past done. I couldn't even walk anymore. If it wasn't for my two friends on either side of me, I would have been laying on the ground because they were literally holding me up. Well, while this was going on, Sergeant Cole turned around, and I think for the second time, I saw him smile. But he smiled this time because of my pain, but I made it up. I brought him the pool championship trophy from the Chaparral Club and put it in the dorm. And I'm going to say this because I know, Ron, you're listening. I am 100% sure that the cadence I called that day during PT was way better than the animal cadence you tried to teach us. Now, before I start reading his letter, I am going to say one more thing. I have had very few heroes in my life, my father being my first and biggest one. My father taught me what it meant to be a mensch, a man, what your responsibilities were that went with that title. He taught me about taking care of a wife, of a child, taking care of people you didn't even know because that's why we're on this earth. My second hero was Staff Sergeant Cole. He taught me what it meant to be part of a team. He taught me to be proud of myself and the team I was on, and he also taught me what it meant to be a part of the greatest military in the world. So, without further comment, I'm going to read his letter. This is a story about faith, healing, and other miracles. My name is Ron, and I met Ben when he was in the Air Force Basic Training. I was his military training instructor, and he has been kind enough to keep the lines of communication open since 1982. By the way, Ben was part of a record-setting flight of airmen. They set the record for the highest points achieved by any flight in our honor flight competition, and that record has never been topped. He was part of the best basic training flight ever. Fast forward to the year 2015. I left the Air Force in 1987 and graduated from physical therapy school at the University of Louisville, which is my hometown. In January of 2015, I was 56 years old and had been working as a PT for several decades. I saw and treated many diagnoses, both in the musculoskeletal system and with all the internal organs. I also had a pretty good innate sense of my own body and what was going on throughout my entire adult life. This is why this episode was so shocking to me. One Monday morning, I had finished preparing our special needs foster sons for their trip to their day program, which they attended each day. I had carried a load of their laundry from the basement to our laundry room on the second floor of the house. I suddenly experienced a sharp pain under each of my clavicles or collarbones, as they are commonly called. The pain lasted about 1 minute and was gone. I went into the bedroom where my wife was still sleeping. She awoke and could see a concerned look on my face. I told her about the pain, and she had me lie down, and she began palpating the clavicles and the muscle around them to see if she could duplicate the pain. My wife is a PT as well, and in our professional world, we try to duplicate a patient's pain to narrow down the possibilities of which structure may be involved in an injury. She could not duplicate the pain, which told us that the pain was organic in nature, meaning an internal organ was causing the pain. In that area, it could only be the heart or the lungs. I was not feeling any other cardiac symptoms, and my blood pressure was normal. I thought my lungs were the culprit since I seemed to get bronchitis and or pneumonia fairly easily. Regardless, a trip to the VA emergency room was in order. At the VA ER, all tests which were performed showed negative results. An electrocardiogram and ECG showed no problems. A CT scan of the chest was negative. A blood test to find elevated enzyme levels was normal. A cardiologist came to my room and spoke with me, and it was decided I should do an extended ECG while walking and then running on a treadmill that was scheduled for the following Friday, 4 days later. During the treadmill test, my ECG remained normal. The cardiologist then decided to do a CT scan of my heart with contrast dye injected into my arteries. She still could find nothing wrong and sent me home with nothing but empty news. Later that afternoon, the chief of cardiology at the VA called me and told me he wanted me to come back into the hospital and be admitted. He said there was something seriously wrong with my heart. Although I felt fine and had been given the green light by the staff cardiologist, I decided to trust the expertise of the chief. I arrived at the hospital and was immediately placed in a bed with 100 wires and tubes connected to my body. It was Friday, and I had to stay all weekend under observation, but I felt fine. On Monday, I underwent a catheter procedure where the cardiologist could see all my arteries on a screen connected to a fluoroscope. That is a moving X-ray and shows the blood traveling through each artery. I was watching on the screen during the procedure, and what I saw was chilling me. 3 of my coronary arteries were blocked, and 2 of them were blocked completely. The third one was blocked by about 70%. One of them, which was completely blocked, is nicknamed the Widowmaker, but of course, I was still alive. Then I noticed that the artery which was blocked 70% had grown all the way around the heart, supplying blood to the entire heart muscle. This is called coronary angiogenesis. This is a very rare occurrence, and that is miracle number 1. In the recovery room, the surgeon came in and told my wife that she is a lucky woman, that I should be dead. That is pretty shocking to hear a surgeon say, and I was upset for a while. I was then transferred to another local hospital where I was scheduled the next morning for bypass surgery. When I awoke from the triple bypass surgery, everything felt very calm. I was in no pain, and I thought maybe the anesthesia was still causing that. But after a few hours, I still had no pain. The surgeon came into my room that afternoon and asked about my pain level. I told him I had no pain, and he immediately felt around my chest and around the incision. I told him I still had no pain. He was quietly surprised and said to let the nurses know as soon as I felt any pain. I felt no pain at all, and that was miracle number 2. I began walking in my room that first evening, and the next day I was walking in the hallway past the nurses' station. I felt good to stand and stretch after sitting in that recliner for hours. After a few more days, I was discharged to home. My first day, I was walking on the treadmill very slowly for 1 hour. The second day home, my wife took me to Walmart, and I made several laps inside the store. The third day, it was Sam's Club and many laps around the inside. The next day, I began increasing my time on the treadmill and my speed. By the end of 3 weeks, I was walking on the treadmill for 1 hour at a pace of 2.5 miles per hour. I went to the surgeon's office for my 3-week post-op appointment. There was a lady in the waiting room the same age as me, the same procedure on the same day, and she was just now getting out of bed for the first time. The doctor gave me clearance to go back to work. He said he had never cleared anybody sooner than 6 weeks before, and that was miracle number 3. I started back to work, not missing a beat. Everything was going well with my recovery. I did not have to attend cardiac rehab at the VA hospital because I had already surpassed any goals they would have set for me. I continued getting stronger and walking longer. Eventually, I was walking 5 miles every morning in the neighborhood at a clip of 5 miles per hour. At the 8-week mark post-op, I had a routine ultrasound done of my heart and my aorta to see if any problems were lingering. During this ultrasound, the technician found a mass in my liver, about the size and shape of a large grape. I saw the image myself, and that shook me a little. By the time I got to my car, I realized this was an attack from the enemy. I said a prayer to God and stated, "There is no way you brought me this far with 3 miracles already for me to be taken out by this thing with my liver. I rebuked Satan on this attack, claimed that God had taken this mass away, and I was healed. 2 weeks later, I had a follow-up ultrasound with a technician who specialized in the liver. He searched for 45 minutes throughout my entire liver and could not find any evidence of a mass. That was miracle number 4. During this entire episode, I received healing from God through faith, through God guiding a surgeon's hands, through prayer, and through God performing a miracle even before I knew I needed it. 2 of these could be considered a coincidence. 3 of these could be considered a medical anomaly. 4 miracles, it could only be God. Now I look for God's miracles every time I have any type of test or trial. I am certain that this is the way He intended us to exercise our faith. Wow, Ron. Thank you for such an incredibly motivational letter. And why do I say it is motivational? When I first read this letter, I figured that I was reading a letter about one man's struggle. A man I look up to and admire, but just a man. Then I went back and I read it again, and I saw in it so many people's struggles. I don't think I have ever met anyone that has not gone through a struggle similar to this. It may not have been physical, but it was a struggle nonetheless. But what Ron does here that's so much different is that he doesn't blame himself, nor does he give himself credit. He knows that every person has limitations, and he knows that not everyone will be able to get through them. Here, however, he gives the glory to God. Each time something happens that is good, he does not say, well, I took vitamin C, D, E, J, Y, and Z, and I pumped myself up, and it's all me. He sits back and counts it as a miracle. He listed each and every miracle in his story. And you know what? This is something we all should do. As I was writing this episode, I took a second and did just that for my recent challenges. As you all know, I recently lost my mom. It hurt, but I'm now counting my blessings and miracles that occurred during it. I was able to get on a plane and go to Baltimore. For me, that is miracle number 1. My sister and I were already close, but we formed a bond that will never, ever be broken. That is miracle number 2. I saw family and friends who I had not seen for literally 40 years. Miracle number 3. My mother passed knowing the full love of her entire family. She was the matriarch of a family of 6 children, 14 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. She also had many nieces and nephews who were there for her and loved her deeply. And even though I'm saying that now as miracle number 4, it was surely miracle number 1. So thank you, Sergeant Cole, Ron, for opening my eyes to the miracles around me. Maybe that is something we can all take a second to do. Just open your eyes to see the miracles around you. Thank you for listening to another episode of My Crazy, My Rules. No one's normal, and here, that's something we celebrate. If you've got a story to share, a comment to make on Sergeant Cole's letter, or just something you need to say, email me at letters@mycrazymyrules.com. That's letters@mycrazymyrules.com, and you can be anonymous or not. That's your choice. And if you feel that you need help, if you feel confused and can't figure things out for yourself, and you need to talk to someone, seek help now. Please don't wait. You can contact the National Suicide Hotline by simply calling 988, or you can text them by sending a text to 741-741 and ask for help. You can also chat with them by emailing them at 988lifeline.org. These people are there for you. And if you liked today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share this show with your friends, family, anyone who needs to know that they're not alone. And there's two things I'm striving for right now. One is to get my first 100 followers, and you know I'm counting on you. But the other thing is I am putting together a 12-hour live broadcast on September 11th, 2025, which is the 24th anniversary of the attack on 9/11. And I need your help. I need your stories. You don't have to have been in New York or Washington, D.C. or Pennsylvania. You simply have to be able to tell me what was changed about your life that day. Each and every one of us had something that we thought of and something that changed us. So please, again, your letters, your stories to letters@mycrazymyrules.com. So until next time, it's my crazy, my rules. What's yours?